today marks Dr. Zenzile Miriam Makeba's 91st heavenly birthday. The iconic songstress passed away on the 9th of November in 2008 after collapsing as she left the stage following a performance in Italy. Widely known as Mama Africa, she left behind several iconic songs and performances engraved in our memory. The icon spent much of her life inspiring us with her music and humanitarian efforts, having served as a UN Humanitarian and Goodwill Ambassador. In the 1960s, she was the first artist from Africa to popularize African music around the world. She is best known for the song Pata Pata, first recorded in 1957 and released in the United States in 1967. She recorded and toured with many popular artists such as Harry Belafonte, Paul Simon and her former husband, Hugh Masekela, who campaigned against the South African system of apartheid. The South African government responded by revoking her passport in 1960 and her citizenship and her right to return in 1963. As the apartheid system crumbled, she returned home for the first time in 1990. Well, to help us unpack the legacy, the continuing legacy of Dr. Miriam Makeba, we're now joined in studio by advocate Sipho Mantula, a Pan-Africanist and a human rights activist and researcher at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome.
Asante sana, Brother Peter, Jambo Africa. Good evening to our viewers across the continent and across the globe. And
I love that you mentioned across the continent and across the globe, because who we're talking about was such a person, an African in every way in terms of being Pan-African, but one that represented us at the highest seat of the globe at the UN.
That is quite correct. But Brother Peter, let me hasten to say to our viewers, the life of Gogo Zenzile Miriam Makeba, if we date back from 1932, when she was born, one has to look at how was the global politics shaping and look alike. There was a great war. There was a great financial crisis in 1930s to 1935. But also when you look at the period you went to the United Nations twice, it's almost 6 decades now. In 1963, we are marking 60 years of her famous speech at the UN, and in 1964. But 63 is so critical that he was talking about the Sharpeville Langa massacre, because she lost one of her family members. So if we have to construct her role in the global politics, she will say that I'm not a politician, but I sing about politics. She will cover the issues that affect the African continent. So when she was at the UN, she was also at the OAU meeting in 1963 in Addis Ababa. So if you look from him from UN, OAU, you find that character of a leader, but at the same time of a mother, and also of an empress of song, using the power of music. As you were introducing songs like Pata Pata, it's a very contested song in the 21st century in terms of its IP rights. Aluta Continua, highly contested. So if one is to frame the life and times of Miriam Makeba, returning from home to exile, I think that's one aspect we have to touch on, because I don't think Mazi, when she returned home, there was that joy. Yeah. I think she was not treated well. I actually today tweeted that people are deleting and erasing Mazi's music on their playlist on the national radio. We find that we want to talk about Mazi only when she passed on. But this day is very important. Both her parents were ordinary parents. Her mother was arrested. Mazi was born when her mother was in prison. So it's a sad moment when one has to look. The family, when this day comes, they always try to reminisce. I will talk about their grandson, Lumumba, Zenzile, was named after Mazi. Their mother, or this daughter, the only daughter of Mazi, passed on or did transition in Guinea-Conakry, where Mazi went exile, when she was banned also in the US. So she has failed double jeopardy, been banned and revoked his citizenship in South Africa. In the US, her relation with the Black Panther, Stokely Carmichael, and then going to connect with Sokoture again. So you can see this is a vast web of knowledge of this woman.
There's so much to reflect on a long life lived. I think most people know the musical story, but when I watch that tape of her at the United Nations, I can't help but think that even she at the time perhaps didn't realize the enormity of what she was doing, and that she was very much at the front of the struggle, delivering a key message at a key time.
That is correct. And remember that voice. She was speaking with a small voice, a little voice, if you can recall, as if she was so immersed with this knowledge. But political writings are saying Dumanokwe and Robert Reich of the ANC International Relation Affairs were playing a critical role in the drafting of that speech. Despite that, we know that Mazi was a pan-Africanist. She went on to train as an applicator, as a Azanian People's Liberation Army member. So Mazi was also confronting apartheid through the mic and through the barrel of the gun. So even when she went to the UN, she knew that there will be some resistance, but there was what I call cultural diplomacy in action. I have complained to our Minister of International Relations, Naledi Pandor. I said, you use political diplomacy, economic diplomacy, but you miss one child. And that child is an orphan in your corridor. That's cultural diplomacy. Hence, Mazi was the first and the last cultural ambassador in this country. Accredited, the language of Mazi she was multilingual. She could sing in Arabic, in French, in Portuguese, in Kiswahili, in Setswana also. I don't know whether you know a song where he talks about Khosi Seretse.
Right.
It's a song about the people of Botswana. So if you look at the role of Mazi, she was a polyglot, if one can use that word. She was a polyglot. She could use many songs in one line. Songs like Masakane. If you look how South Africa and the continent is going through, Brother Peter, Miriam Makeba will have come through and explain the situation of load shedding. He will have come and explained the issues of corruption. Hence the song Masakane. I always think about it in the early 1996 when South Africa was coming out of apartheid system.
So she was appointed cultural ambassador by the Department of International Relations.
It was Foreign Affairs by the
Foreign Affairs at that stage, which means that there was a recognition about her importance and a role that she had to play. My question then becomes, what happened after that? Because it seemed that she was seen and recognized for a moment in time, and yet she'd been back home for a long time.
That is quite true. You know, there was one writing by Mbeki Peterson at Wits, when Mbeki Peterson said, when Mazi went to the inauguration of Tata in 1994, she was given a cold shoulder. They say, you are not a VIP in this inauguration. Despite that, Mazi had a good relation with Tata. Again, performances, Mazi had to fight to perform. You know, when last year at UNISA, at the Thabo Mbeki School, we had a intergenerational dialogue for his 90th anniversary, the 9 decades of Mazi's life. There were many friends of Mazi that spoke, Abu Mama, Maralo, Abigail Kubeka, Abu Metunokwe, Ringo. And they spoke about how she was treated. You know, in some performances, she'll be given a mere toilet to be her change room. She will be cheated even with money. And I think, Brother Peter, when she was given this ambassadorial role, we need to acknowledge the role of Ambassador Willie Nhlapo, the then Foreign Affairs Minister Dlamini Zuma, because they persuaded former President Thabo Mbeki through a cabinet memorandum to appoint Mazi as a cultural ambassador. So she was fully paid, both the office at home and in Dirko. So I think what we missed there was that we never built the other Miriam Makebas after her. Your Simpiwe Dana, your Thandiswa Mazwai, you can say they should have followed that foot. Abo Tunokwe, Sutukazi Arosi, Sipokazi. There are many young stars, you know. Sibongile Khumalo, the late, Mambusi Mhlongo. So you can see most of them, they followed the African spirituality of Mazi. So I think the government did not do enough. Our Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, they tried to fight for his rights. They ended up retreat on the issues that dealt with these IP rights. So if when we look, Brother Peter, the life and the times of Mazi, we failed to honor her when she was alive. And I still remember when I speak to Mama Letambuli, and I said, you know, when you recall one of her songs, the last songs, when she speaks about when she passed on, why we must cremate her, why should we throw her bones on the sea? I don't know whether people they do. Miriam Makeba was not buried. She was cremated. And there was a reason for that. And hence you have to understand that she lived 9 diplomatic lives. She had 9 diplomatic passports. She traveled the vast land of Guinea-Conakry, Mozambique, Suriname, Jamaica. She visited almost the countries where she was given the red carpet and the green carpet as Mama Africa. And I remember Zenzile said to me, Sipho, one day, say, our grandmother never said, I'm Mama Africa. It was the people. It was the communities that labeled her Mama Africa.
Talking about a mother figure, the Miriam Makeba Center for Girls, not often talked about, but this was something that she was passionate about. Very,
indeed, absolutely. And you can look at her grandson, his grandson Lindelani, when today she was interviewed in one of the media TVs, he said, you know, Mazi was able to dissect GBV. She thought of a young girl child. And she said, I want to have this center for girls. And when you read his autobiography, she mentions that she wanted those center for young girl child to become center for young girl child and young boy child. But it should be in 9 provinces, not only in Gauteng province. Our social development, I think they tried to assist in the first initiative. They backed off. So it is sad if one looks at the character of how Miriam Makeba was left out of the Center for Girls. And I know many of our great artists, Brother Peter, many jazz artists like Abu Brenda Sisani, Abu Mamshado Twala, the Miriam Makeba Foundation, they want to have what I called, they want to resuscitate that center. But so one will urge, if government officials are watching, technocrats, administrators, they need to really take care of that center. I know that is under renovations, and Mazi was able to take care of those children. So one wonders, if you want to talk about GBV now, is it fashionable to waste the money of doing conferences in Sandton rather than investing in the centers of education? Food security, Mazi was an ambassador of food security in the DRC under United Nations. So hence I say to you, Mazi was brought on fighting poverty. Hence, when we celebrate her life this evening and today, we should read Mazi outside South Africa. We should position Mazi in the global affairs, in the continental affairs, but also in the local affairs, domestic issues.
As we wrap up, is there something that we don't know about Miriam Makeba that's not talked about that you think is important for us to mention tonight?
Peter, I think when we have to look at his biography, geography is that Miriam Makeba stayed in Soweto, in Kilani, Mufolo, Mzimhlope, Tshwane. Miriam Makeba traveled the length and breadth of this country. And also what we miss about Miriam Makeba is her life on Harry Belafonte, Stokely Carmichael, Hugh Wahamasikela. So on a lighter note, you can say Mazi was a polyandrist. But she did not marry them at the same time, you know, and not to insult my elder from Hapo Zamani, but looking at Mazi, that some of the anecdotes of Mazi, her love for the food. They say she was a good cooker, a good dresser. You know, when you think of a person who dresses so modest, it was Miriam Makeba. So we'll urge our young people, young girl child who are watching, dress like Mazi, speak like Mazi, emulate her character. So I think those are the issues that one has to give the geography and the biography of Mama Africa. And I know on the 18th of March, this Abafazi Festival, her granddaughter Zenzile will be performing with Africa Mchize, and many other women will be performing in Tshwane at the State Theatre. So if one has to look around her legacy, so me from Uganda came last year, did an album reimagining Miriam Makeba. So I think what people need to learn, they must listen to her music.